Okay, so today, thank you very much to Dr. Betty Reardon for being with us. This is Global Citizenship Education Interview Series, and today we have a special guest and a special podcast.
Delighted to be with you and converse with you on this crucial issue.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Betty Reardon is the founder and director of the International Institute on Peace Education. Maybe we can start by listening to your precious experience with the Institute, and maybe you can share with us the several initiatives that the Institute has been undertaking in these years.
Well, I'm director emeritus now, but still serve as a consultant to what we refer to as IIPE, the International Institute on Peace Education, which was founded at Teachers College in 1982 on the eve of the second special session on disarmament at the United Nations. And we were able to hold that institute internationally with no budget because a number of educators had been named to the delegations that came to the UN for that special session.
Right.
They were from other countries. American delegation had no educators. We had a movie star instead.
Right.
But it came out of recognizing the need that there were people coming into this field we call peace education who needed two things. They needed some training in the developing methodologies and acquaintance with materials and so forth. But they also needed to be able to network in solidarity. And in those years, many peace educators were working very much in isolation.
Right.
So that it was very important to have this networking. And as people would come each year, we had it in the metropolitan area of New York for 3 years. No, 2 years.
2 years.
And then the first one out of the country was in Canada because the Canadian participants
Right.
wanted to do it. People came from the Philippines. They wanted to hold one there because what we usually did when we went abroad would have 50% of the participants international, 50 national, so that they could interact and that the nationals would have this opportunity to make these connections. So year by year, we went to all places all over the world, usually co-sponsored by another university.
Right.
It did the hosting and the local. But the program was in the spirit of the Institute, developed in cooperation with the participants.
Right.
And one of the aspects of the Institute was that we're in a new and growing field. There are no real experts yet.
Right.
We all are developing our expertise, and you get invited to, you are accepted, that people that applied, you are accepted on the basis of what can you bring that will be helpful to others, and what is it that you want to take away that will help the field.
Interesting.
So that's how the Institute works, and it works in a communal fashion. The pedagogical framework is one of inquiry. We have a central issue each year in which we explore what we know, think about what we don't know, explore the methods we use in teaching, exchange, and so forth. And out of that, lots of little sub-networks of people cooperating on projects.
Right.
And most recently, we have one of the projects was a special issue of a journal called Infactus Pax, which is a peace education online journal,
Interesting.
which came out of a sub-network, mainly the Latin American group, who are very much part of the global group, but also a communal group, in looking at post-conflict issues.
Right, right.
And so the Puerto Rican and Argentine and Colombian and so forth, one of our members has been involved as a peace educator activist in the Colombia peace process
Wonderful.
for years and years.
Sure.
So that's pretty much what the Institute is. It's a living, breathing thing with no walls
Sure.
and no money, but lots of spirit and lots of wonderful people joining together.
Wonderful. Very interesting. So, obviously, you have a strong experience within the field of peace education, and I'd like to ask you this, let's say, straightforward question. What is, in your opinion, the connection between peace education and the notion of global citizenship and global citizenship education, based on obviously your experience of life, your knowledge, and all you have developed throughout your experience?
Well, that's a very, very broad and comprehensive question. So I'm going to uh, talk about one aspect, understanding that it connects to a lot of other aspects. Uh, First of all, peace education, as my colleagues, and students have practiced it, is largely a matter of learning. And we refer to peace learning. And the learning occurs through the formulation of the most cogent questions. Rather than posing a subject matter as such, we use the subject matter to address the question. So it is very substantive, and we have pulled from many disciplines, including peace research, which is largely unknown even in peace education.
Right.
Um, and so that we understand that we are in a situation in which there are many experiences, human experiences, that we can draw upon, but we also need to hone the skills of what I call the institutional creative imagination. That in general, we see that the problematic lies in the inadequacy of the institutions to deal with the problems that we're faced with. So, peace education, in one of its aspects, tries to develop the capacity to assess and then to try to pose alternatives to the existing institutional patterns.
Right.
One of the major objectives of peace learning is political efficacy, because although we talk of the culture of peace and the attitudinal and affective aspects, uh, even in a field like human rights, it is political, because you need to have citizens with those values have the capacities, the political capacities to achieve those values,
Right.
to achieve those institutions.
Sure.
So peace learning is, in a large part, learning for political efficacy at all levels,
Right.
including the world level. Now, that obviously, since we live in a situation of inadequate national and international institutions,
Right.
and those institutions mediate our citizenship, that automatically connects it to what you are calling global citizenship.
Right.
I, however, am not growing less and less comfortable with that phraseology,
Right. Interesting.
and might return to when I first came into the field full time. I had been a practicing classroom teacher. So I know a lot about the realities, not the present, because I know how much it's changed, but I know something about the act of teaching, the process of teaching. And which is why I prefer the term learning, because sometimes think great act of hubris to say I am a teacher, but it's also a statement of pride.
Right.
But when I first came in full time to doing what now we're referring to as peace education. I met a lot of Europeans who were way ahead of us. And in England, particularly, I met people who were doing world citizenship education.
Right.
And there was something called the New Education Fellowship, which came out of the 1930s and was very pacifist. But after the Second World War, and it was pretty much in Britain with some little connections to the continent. But in England, it changed itself to be called the World Education Fellowship.
Right.
And they began to conceptualize world citizenship. But go back and link to my point on political efficacy. What they were talking about in terms of world citizenship was navigating through these new world institutions, and they were called world institutions. It was called UN was called the World Organization, not the Global Organization.
Right.
Um, and just as a side, the concept of globalization has come about as a result of, I saw that other question, the neoliberal market. But
Right.
so that's another thing that makes me uncomfortable with it. But my concept, and I think it was underneath what my British colleagues at the time were doing, my concept of citizenship is that it takes place, it is something that you have as a member of a polity, a political organism of some kind, and that it is a contract. It's a contract between the individual and the polity. And the polity is the state of New York. All right. I am a citizen of the state of New York. And I am in a contract relationship with that state. It will provide uh, certain infrastructures, certain resources, an education system, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And my job is to keep track of what they're doing, make sure they're doing what they had contracted with me to do, a contract I made when I campaigned for a candidate, or fulfilled when I campaigned for a candidate, or voted, or whatever. So it's a relationship. Citizenship is a relationship.
Sure. Sure.
And it has to be it has to be carried out with a sense of co-responsibility.
Right.
So, and which is that concept of responsibility is central to citizenship and central to everything that relates to peace education and political efficacy. Because if you take a political act, you are responsible for it.
Right.
And if you fail to take a political act, you are also responsible.
Sure.
I was very, very annoyed with people after this last election who would say, "Oh, I didn't vote. I didn't like either of the candidates." And that is not your prerogative. You are bound to make a decision. You didn't want to do the hard work of assessing those differences. You found each of them unattractive. Lots of people did. But also we knew that what was at stake, and we had to do the work to make a decision.
Right.
And I would tell them outright, because it was an abnegation of responsibility and with really horrendous results.
Right. Right.
So,
Indeed. And sorry to interrupt, let me
yeah,
ask you
no,
this question. Do you think obviously the concept of responsibility is extremely important as describing right now, especially in such a crucial time and moment. But don't you think that the there is a sort of a lack of sense of responsibility, not only in our own community, but in more on a global scale. So what I'm saying here um, um, is getting hard to take full responsibility on something that is really close to us, but at the same time we kind of fail to understanding that the actions that we take in our local community in our nation would also affect someone else on the other part of the world. Do you think there is a lack of this?
What I do in this neighborhood
Hmm.
affects what happens someplace else in the world.
Right.
That's the ecological fact,
Right.
eco-political fact. My politics here.
Right.
We're a center for immigration.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
politics of this city is very important to that.
Yes.
So we're connected to everything. What our job as peace educators is to surface those connections and to situate responsibility within the connections and to understand, the butterfly effect.
Right.
The butterfly flaps her wings.
Right. Right.
It can change the whole affects the whole atmosphere. And I have often put it in terms of the lack of responsibility at the higher levels and the present institution is a hierarchy.
Right.
So at the higher levels of the hierarchy, there has grown a sense of responsibility only to a small group or to, in the worst cases, to self, such as we have now.
Right.
But that is tracing out those interlinking responsibilities is part of what we need to do in peace education so that learners understand two things, those interconnections and how they function and how one's own actions intersects with and affects the whole system ultimately.
Right. Right.
And also knowing that and then having the skills that give you the confidence to act politically and to know that there is an arena for global action in global civil society, which is a whole new actor in the international system and which has, so far as I can see, hasn't had much of effect on the curriculum or what's taught in schools.
Right.
It's still done through a national and international and global, in some cases, lens. And that's very important.
What is missing there, in your opinion? What we're getting into a discussion on curriculum and teaching in the classroom. What, at the moment, what is your feeling and vision on what is going on in terms of classroom and teachings?
I don't know. I mean, I'm too far out of the classroom. I just have secondhand information.
Right.
And actually sometimes it's fourth hand because people I talk to are professors.
Right.
And they are at some remove from the the school classroom. Once in a while I have a chance to talk to teachers. And in this country, they're under fantastic pressures that
Right.
don't relate to pedagogy or curriculum. So one of the things I think is missing is community support.
Community support.
Community support for teachers.
Right.
And ideally, if I were to sort of spin that out into the preferred reality, it would be an aware community support.
Right.
Communities that know how they are related to this whole network and would support teachers in bringing those connections into the classroom.
Right. Right.
And I know that a lot of teachers do interrelational education and they're doing ecological education and so forth, but it isn't standard.
Right.
And I don't think they have opportunities for the kind of learning that they need to do very often either. That's, all by, as far as I know, still by the requirements,
Sure.
as
So a lot of pressure going on, and
yeah, and also this very the standards are so abstract, and numerical rather than substantive and qualitative. How many students do well on this examination?
Yeah.
So
All right, I'd like to come back to trying to discuss with you and define the word citizenship. I think that was an interesting point you made. One of the, my understanding is that one of the crucial point was the concept of responsibility that it kind of identifies with citizenship. What else would you like to add when we are discussing citizenship? Because we are trying in our discussion, obviously, to focus on a definition of citizenship, but also attached to that. And this is what I'm really interested in understanding when you get the global part on it. So maybe we could discuss what other 2 or 3 elements you believe are very important when we discuss citizenship, and then we can try to understand and develop our discussion toward the two words of global and citizenship when they get together. What is your understanding and what is your opinion on that?
uh, I'm not all clear on the question. You all me to talk more on responsibility at the global level, or
Well, I mean, I think the definition of citizenship that involves, as you said, the important area of like citizens' responsibility is very important, very interesting. So I'd like to know if around the concept of citizenship, you have any other area that you believe is important. So one is responsibility. That's very clear. If we don't take responsibility for our actions and we don't act when we are supposed to act, then obviously the results
yeah.
will be, the consequences will be evident and are evident to everyone in the specific case of the political elections in the United States, for example. But what else do you believe is crucial when we discuss the
Responsibility involves a number of uh, elements, and there are two that I would mention now. One is capacity/skills, all right, and the other is opportunity. So, and there is an interrelationship, because sometimes an opportunity um, leads people to develop capacities that formerly they didn't think they had. Um, but in linking that to the point of political efficacy, peace learning in directing the learner toward development of political efficacy should work on the capacities of the learner to take action in the public space.
right,
Now, that might require some specific skills. The capacity is just the ability to do it, and the skills are knowing how to. And
right.
so, for instance, conflict resolution is one of those skills that
Sure.
you could contribute it to smooth the way to a goal or to reach an accord or something like that. But very important is learning to recognize opportunity. What is overwhelming to most of us is the vastness, the complexity
Right,
of the global problematic.
right,
So that means that we need an eye for the possibility as to where we might have an effect.
right,
I think there are several global movements now that have demonstrated that ability.
right.
And one that we know, everybody knows, of course, that's in our area, is the environmental movement,
Right.
which is one of the most significant
Sure.
global movements with a whole array of individual civil society organizations and internetwork collaboration and so forth.
Right.
But you get down to your local level and you want to be part of the whole global energy to try to transcend the impending doom of climate change.
Sure.
And you see, if I could get this specific environmental problem in my neighborhood changed, that's going to make a contribution.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to finding out how do you do that, you can look around to what other neighborhoods have done, not only here, but elsewhere, because this technology makes it possible for us to have connections with other communities. So that intercommunity networking is a wonderful revealing mechanism for opportunity.
That's true.
But it's training the mind to look for opportunities, not going, oh my gosh, this is just too much.
Right.
But
Right.
oh my God,
Those are well.
awful. But where is the point where I can enter? And who do I need to come along with me? And
Sure.
all of those questions go into the seizing of opportunities. And so that there is the climate change resistance, the human rights movement, the women's movement.
Right.
These are all global movements, and the connections are global, and the collaborative relationships are global.
Sure.
But for the most part, those connections are made between people who are working on the ground.
Right. So there is this connection between the work done within the specific community and then a sort of a global connection that is what as the actions that have been taken in a specific context and then that inspires a global network or others. All right, this is interesting. All right. All right. Okay.
Because every day we're connected. I mean, we open our computer and the emails are from all over the world.
Right.
That's our personal emails,
Yeah.
as well as our, political action ones and so forth. So.
Interesting. All right, two more questions, and then we're going toward the conclusion of the interview. This is very interesting. Thank you so much for taking time for doing this. Um, so, um, obviously, we are in a society dominated by neoliberalism and a growing nationalism. So, I'd like to know um, why and in what ways education will be key to sort of um, support those who are taking care of education in such a context where you have a strong growing nationalism, not only in the United States but in Europe as well, and I would say worldwide.
Well, I think you're understating a little. I don't think it's just nationalism. I think it's incipient authoritarianism and fascism.
Right, right.
Okay?
Yes.
So, and I think that needs to be recognized.
Yeah.
It's just not an uncomfortable situation. It is a very dangerous situation for everything that we have been working for, which is a society in which
Yes.
human beings can flourish as human beings and interrelate with each other in a way that each helps the other to flourish.
Right.
But now it's every, and I will use this language quite consciously, every man for himself. Um, I think that both nationalism, everybody who knows my work knows I think this anyway. So I think they're manifestations of what Connell had called the global gender order, and I think they're versions of the fundamental patriarchal paradigm.
Right.
And that, and until we recognize the nature and pervasiveness of patriarchal structures and patriarchal thinking, we will not be able to be on a healthy path to transformation. Your hope to have transformational global citizenship education. And so transformation involves not only changes in individual hearts and minds, but it um, involves changing the human and institutional environment in which we interrelate. And when I talked about earlier about the institutional aspects, the making those changes
Yes.
with a view in mind to transcending
Right.
the patriarchalism, what I sometimes call the patriarchal trap,
Right.
is very important. So that and also what is really wonderful is that very few people really understand the possibility of gender studies, so that you could push gender studies and people wouldn't realize that you were really doing political transformation studies.
Right.
Uh, but that understanding that gender is not just the inequality between men and women, but in the sense of the global gender order, it's inequality at every level
Right.
between and among people and among down through the levels.
Sure.
So that it is necessary to understand that, and then for the learner and for us to understand how what is articulated as nationalism, as neoliberalism, are in fact manifestations of this phenomena, and that it's not just confronting nationalism, confronting neoliberalism, but looking at the whole, and then to see how do we raise an inquiry in our classrooms that will awaken learners.
Right.
We can't tell them this, because you can't tell people something and have it be transformational. And that's just an exchange of information.
Right.
So our job is to create an inquiry which draws the learner into their own reflective process,
Right.
and then joining those reflective processes joined together in a common analysis of the situation, that when if we are at the same time developing this notion of responsibility and capacity to act, that will their understanding of the situation, their knowing that they have the capacities, will give them the courage to act. And that's one of the things we also need to educate for, and that is for courage, because we live in a time in which we have to take risks to work for what we believe is what is possible for the world.
Right. Right. Very interesting. So another element, crucial element, seems courage in a way.
Oh, it's absolutely essential. And we see that every day, that uh, uh, I think it's gotten a little bit mushy and out of hand, but the revelations about the abuse of women, which we always knew. Women always knew this all our lives. But now that it is being revealed, it's being revealed by acts of courage,
Yeah.
by people who were in these abusive situations, which were maintained through fear. And they transcended their fear and they made a movement. And, that we see that over and over again in human rights. And this fabulous woman in Pakistan who just died at the age of 66 over the weekend, who was an advocate of human rights, who spoke truth to power, even though she was jailed and under harassment all the time,
Right.
because she had the courage. And, the the women, the Liberian women, one got the prize, but it was the Liberian women who had that courage to confront their own government,
Yeah.
and to go and physically sit in at the peace talks and demand that something happen. They were putting their lives on the line.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So we don't all have to, be martyrs or tell our students that but they do have to have a bit of backbone. And your backbone gets stronger and stronger the more other backbones are lined up with you. And so that's why solidarity is also an important value for peace education.
Do you think that education lost in a way that pushed toward encouraging students and young learners to be interested in politics?
Yeah, if you can interest them not in politics as it is currently defined and described, but if you can interest them in the process through which they enact their responsibility to their communities.
Right.
And ultimately, that's politics.
Yeah.
And I, for years, have been advocating what I call politics as learning. And then as you enter into political action, not only to achieve ends, but to learn about how to achieve those ends. And that when you are successful, you need to analyze very carefully how much of that was dumb luck and how much of that was really the consequence of your intelligent action. And when you fail, you just don't sit down and cry. You look at that and learn from where the action was not effective, why it was not effective, so forth, rather than just beating the other guy. And in some ways, that is part of what's practiced, but it's still we look at it more as power, as a limited quantity, and politics is the way we compete to get a big share of it, or uh, as much of it as we need to get our ends.
Right.
When we should be viewing power as the capacity for persons and communities to achieve ends.
Right.
And if it can be in the hands of those who know how to do something, or it can be shared among people if that's the better way. But it's not a limited uh, uh, resource that only the privileged should have.
Sure. All right, very interesting. So this is the last question before the end of our interview. Um, what are the key elements that you feel that education should develop in nowadays learners? In other words, what is the most important thing that education should focus on fostering in nowadays learners? Based on your feeling, previous experience
You mean in our learners, in the students?
in a student. Yeah.
Okay. The primary thing is to cultivate within them a sense of universal human dignity. The belief that no matter what an individual's capacities, whether they're pleasing to you or not pleasing to you, that they are endowed with human dignity. And one of the ways that you manifest your own human dignity is by recognizing their dignity and treating it accordingly.
Right.
And that's the core to everything. But now we have one other central thing that we have to cultivate as well, and that is uh, well, I sometimes have referred to it as resacralizing the earth, that we must cultivate in children and in all learners the understanding that they are part of the earth, that their lives come from the earth, that the future of the earth depends in large part on how they live their lives.
Right.
and that much of their life satisfaction will come from the quality of the earth on which they live.
Interesting.
So if those were two inner core concepts that animated the rest of our learning, I think we'd be on the right track.
Right.
So.
Right. All right. Thank you so much to Dr. Betty Reardon. This was a precious conversation. Thank you for joining the interview today.
Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to spew forth all of these ideas.
Well,
Thank you. Enjoyed talking with you.
thank you.